Chapter 33. Alex woke up to an empty bed and went looking for Matt. She stepped into the kitchen, and he came in the front door. "There you are." She moved close and wrapped her arms around his waist. "Hey babe." His arms came around her too. They stood for several seconds, just holding each other. Then together they went in the kitchen. "What do you want for breakfast?" "You don't have to cook for me." She went to the coffee pot and poured herself a cup. "How long have you been up?" "A couple hours." "You should have woken me." Turning, she leaned against the cabinets and sipped her coffee while watching him. "No need." Matt shrugged. "The quiet time gave me time to think, get my head on straight." He went to the fridge and pulled out a carton of eggs and several more things. "What had it so crooked?" She watched him move, glad he was so comfortable in her kitchen. "I was doing it to myself." He pulled a bowl down from the cabinet and set it next to the stove. Then turned to face her. "I was letting my brain make me feel bad about what you and I have." He moved closer. "I just needed a little time to get past feeling guilty." He pulled her into his arms and kept eye contact. Sitting out on that porch. He tilted his head toward the front of the house. "I realized that what I feel for you doesn't take away from what I felt for Connie. I loved her, I always will, but what we have is different, and she would want me to be happy. She would have slapped me upside the head for feeling like I had betrayed her by wanting to live again. I know that now." He dropped a kiss on the end of her nose. Alex watched his face for a moment longer, then stretched up to kiss him. "I'm glad you've realized that." She kissed his lips once before dropping back onto flat feet. "Now I'm hungry. It's time to get something ready to eat." They worked together to make breakfast, and Matt made sure she had eaten enough to fuel her day and the healing her body was still doing. After they cleaned up, he loaded her into the truck and headed for the barn. He seemed different this morning. Alex couldn't quite put her finger on what it was, but there was something different. Something more at ease and less guarded. At her direction, he parked in her usual spot outside the barn and waited while she got out and led him inside. He stopped and talked to her dad while she went through and out to the paddock to see the horses. She was standing beside Honey's head, scratching her ears and talking to her when Matt found her. "Who's this?" he asked, coming up beside her. He ran his hand along Honey's neck and patted her withers. "This is Honey." Alex rubbed her face against the horses. "She's my baby." "She certainly seems to like you." "Yep, I've had her since she was little. She's my usual mount when I'm able to ride." She glanced at him with a frown. She felt great this morning, not even a twinge of soreness, but she was sure he wouldn't let her ride today. "It looks like she missed you." He patted the horse's withers again. "She's not the only one." She pulled a carrot out of her pocket that she'd brought from home and fed it to Honey. "How long have you had her?" he asked. "Almost 10 years. She wasn't even weaned yet when I started taming her. We played together and we were best friends for a long time." "How will she feel about you having a new friend?" He smoothed a loose strand of hair back from her face and tucked it behind her ear. She looked up at him and smiled. "I didn't plan on asking her." Honey pushed against her shoulder with her nose. Alex laughed. "As long as you don't take too much attention from her, that is." She nuzzled the horse and patted her neck before taking Matt's hand and walking with him out of the corral. Honey followed until they got to the gate, and Alex turned around. "Stay here," she told the horse while Matt opened the gate. Honey snorted but stayed put. Alex stepped out the gate and waited while he closed it, then took his hand again as they headed for her parents' house. What did Daddy have to say? They walked slowly, more enjoying the walk and time together than trying to get somewhere. "Not much." He asked how you're doing and when I thought you'd be back to work. I didn't know, but Nick's been sending 1 or 2 hands a day over to help him out since you were hurt. He squeezed her hand and she looked over at him. I don't like that it takes 2 people to fill in for you. She shook her head. Who did he send over? Were they like us or normal humans? Matt frowned. Does it matter? Not really, but you gotta remember, I'm stronger than a lot of straight humans, and I can get more done simply because I don't need as much help. If he was only sending 1 normal hand, then Daddy had to do more than he usually has to. I still don't like it. I think you're overworking yourself. I promise. I'm not overdoing it. Unless we've got something big going on, or I've been lifting a lot, I'm rarely even tired at the end of the day. She smiled at his concern, knowing it meant his feelings for her were growing. That was a good thing because hers for him were. She had no doubt that if nothing happened to prevent it, they'd be mated before Christmas. After Alex was satisfied that things were taken care of, and her father wasn't working too hard, they went up to the house to see her mom. At the house, Alex knocked on the front door before pushing it open and heading inside. Matt hesitated but followed. Mom, she called. Where are you? In here, dear. Jolene's voice came from somewhere in the back of the house. It was either the kitchen or the laundry room, so Alex headed in that direction, her hand still holding Matt's as she pulled him along beside her. They found her mom standing at the kitchen island, wrist deep in dough, with flour dusting her apron and face. Hey, a smile split Jolene's face. How are you this morning? I'm fine, but someone's worried I'm not quite fully healed yet, so he won't let me get back to work. She frowned in Matt's direction for a second, then smiled at her mom again. What are you making? Her eyes flicked down to the dough her mom was working on the counter. This is biscuits for lunch, but I'm planning to make rolls for dinner too. She looked at Alex a moment, tilting her head, as if trying to see below the surface. You say you're fine, but I want to see your side. Mom, Alex dragged the word out like a teenager. I said I'm fine, why can't you just take my word for it? Because I know you and your father both, and you're too much like him to suit me. Come on, lift your shirt. She flipped one flour and dough cover finger upward. Alex glanced at Matt and rolled her eyes before pulling the edge of her shirt up and showing her mother the pale pink scar tissue where her wounds had been. See. She dropped her shirt again, then slid onto a bar stool across the counter from her mother. I told you I'm fine. Matt slid into the seat next to her and covered one hand with his. I'll feel better once those scars are gone, but I won't complain. It looks so much better than the last time I saw it. I didn't think it would be healed so quickly, at the rate you were going. She looked up with a frown. Did JV work on you again? No, I wouldn't let her. Matt said. She's stretched to the limit right now, and being limited to only the most emergent cases. I hadn't heard. Jolene turned to look at him. Is she all right? She started cutting biscuits with an old aluminum biscuit cutter Alex knew had once belonged to her grandmother. She's tired but fine. Nick said the team was overextended between taking care of Rebecca and making sure there was someone at the house for Alex and me. My sister was using her talent to stop Rebecca's labor and still working her shift as an enforcer. She really shouldn't have done both, and now that we no longer need help at the house, her enforcer duties have been suspended until she's better rested. Matt shook his head. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in the week since I'd seen her last. Oh dear. She did look me over yesterday and told me to give it another day or two before doing too much. But it's healed a lot overnight. Alex rubbed one hand over her shirt where the scars were. I'm surprised how much healing they've done overnight. Jolene frowned and looked at her a moment, then looked at Matt. Did anything different happen last night to trigger better healing? Her eyes flicked back and forth while she waited for an answer. Alex looked at Matt, who met her gaze, then back at her mom. I can't think of anything that would give me a burst of healing like this. It's a little weird. Let me think about it a bit and see if I can figure it out. Why don't the two of you stay for lunch? I don't know, ma'am. We wouldn't want to put you out, Matt said. Nonsense. I'm feeding the hands the con sent over and I've got plenty. We'd love to have you. She put the last of the biscuits on the pan, scraped all the loose flour and leftover dough bits into a pile, then into the trash can before going to the sink to wash her hands. All right then, how long? Matt asked. Jolene dried her hands, looked around the kitchen. 45 minutes or so. She picked up the pan and slid it into the hot oven. We can do that. Alex looked at Matt, brows lifted. Do we have other plans this afternoon? I thought I'd take you out tonight. You know, like a real date. She slid off her stool and slipped between his knees where he still sat. I like it, but it would have been nice to be asked. Sliding her hands around his waist, she leaned in and kissed his mouth briefly before pulling away. I'll be back in time for lunch, Mom. She headed for the front door, strutting enough to make her ass move with every step. She wondered if Matt would follow or stay and talk to her mom.